I was good at advertising. I was getting paid a lot of money, but I was not happy. I had a moment where I'm like, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life or another day. And when I quit my job, my family and friends thought I was crazy. But even when I was struggling, I was so much happier. Entrepreneurs put blood, sweat, and tears into their ideas, but you have to believe in the idea. You have to love the idea. You have to be fulfilled with it. I would walk around it and just be like, oh my God, these guys are superheroes. These pieces appear overnight. I forgot all about my fear. I forgot I'm not a superhero. I can't do what street artists do. And I just wanted to make that idea a reality. That's when I make the joke. That first night I got bit by a radioactive can of spray paint.
The importance of balancing all the different parts of our life, so you got the wealth aspect. What's the lesson in what you've just shared with us?
I think the biggest lesson is that
are you looking for actionable insights from the world's most inspiring individuals? The Built by Love podcast is on a mission to transform your life, your business, and your health. Tune in for impactful conversations with people who do business differently. Avoid burnout, acquire freedom, and live life fully on your own terms. With me, Pete Daly-Dickson, alongside Daniel Bussius.
Phil, thank you so much. But you're cool, by the way, to say Phil, right? Now that you're like...
All my friends call me Brody. That's what I always tell people. My artist name is Wordsmith, and I make the joke, you don't have to call me Mr. Smith, but I also say that all my friends call me Brody.
Amazing. Thank you for being on the podcast Built by Love today with Peter and I. I'd like to begin with a non-traditional question. Can you tell us a short story of a time that you were out there doing your art and you found yourself in the most precarious situation?
I can. I have several stories. So I take the art with me everywhere, and I love to travel. And one thing people don't know, or maybe they may not realized after doing this for 10 years, is I do get a lot of opportunity. I get a lot of commission walls. I get a lot of opportunity to work with companies and do murals inside of buildings, and it's fantastic. However, having said that, 50% of my work is still renegade. And it will always be 50%. I tell a great story that I was sent to Auckland, New Zealand to do 10 pieces inside the All Blacks rugby team stadium. The week that I was there, I was walking around the city and kept seeing walls, and I did 10 pieces renegade. So it'll always be 50%. The reason I'm saying that is maybe about 5 years ago, my family took my dad back to Krakow, Poland for the first time. And it was a great trip. It was a great family trip. However, I bring the art with me everywhere. And I was getting up at 4:00 in the morning, leaving the hotel and looking for spots to put up my art. And one morning I saw this great location. It was in a roundabout, and the roundabout was a cars and train, and it was just a central point in the town. And I was actually just putting a piece on an electrical box, a rather large piece on a medium-sized electrical box. And I was probably 2/3 of the way through, and I was putting some paste on the page, and I kind of looked up. I sensed something, and I looked up, and there's nobody on the streets, but slow rolling toward me is a cop car. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the worst place to get caught. I don't speak the language. They're not very tolerant. And I'm literally breaking the law. I'm in a city square, and there's no art anywhere around. Like, I'm being very brazen. And so the cop car's coming, I'm in front of the box, pasting. And I just was like, I don't know what to do other than I started moving, kind of dancing with the cop car with the electrical box in front of me. And it got to a point where it was side by side. And then I was behind the box, and I don't know where the cop car was, but I didn't hear a siren. I didn't hear anybody talk. I didn't hear a car door open. And I just kept walking. Meanwhile, the one thing I did hear was boom, 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 boom in my head. I was freaking out because I'm like, oh my God, this is not the place to get caught. And I just kept walking, kept hearing nothing except the resounding heartbeat in my chest. And after maybe about 30 seconds, I looked over my shoulder and the cop car was still slow rolling through the roundabout, well past the electrical box. So to this day, I don't know if they didn't care. I don't know if they didn't see me. I don't know if I did the perfect dance around the box, but I got away with it. I did go back and I finished the piece very quickly, and then I just bolted. And it was the last piece that I was planning to do in Krakow. So I somehow got away with it, but I don't think I ever heard my heartbeat louder in my chest and in my head doing
One of the things I love about that story, Brody, can I call you Brody?
Yeah.
One of the things I love about that story is that even in spite of what you experienced, you still went back and finished, and that just speaks that just says so much about you. It must do, surely.
100%. And I have a couple stories like that where things happened and I had to leave, but I came back and finished. Like I think any artist for the most part will tell you that, unless they landed in jail and physically couldn't get back. But yes, I was not going to have the piece not finished or half finished.
Amazing.
Wow. I was going to ask about unfinished art, if there's ever been situations where you've had to come back, but I think you already just answered that. So have you ever found yourself climbing buildings to get to a good spot, or any other situations where it's a little bit crazy?
Absolutely. So once you start doing this, like I started doing street art rather unexpectedly. But I love the idea that I came up with, so I got bold about doing it. But I was doing small pieces. I say they're like postage stamp size pieces, very small. But once you get that adrenaline rush, once you start doing street art and have any bit of like people recognizing it or talking about it, or just personally myself loving it, you just want to do it more and more. But more and more for a street artist means bigger, bolder, higher. So yeah, you start looking at, I look at cities in a way that nobody else does, or like artists look at cities like nobody else does. Like I walk around a city and I am looking at walls like they are blank canvases, and sometimes those blank canvases are in hard to reach or get to spots. Like you have to be bringing a ladder or using the fire escape ladder to get up and finding a way to get on that spot of the roof. But guess what? If you do hit it, if you are successful, it is in a spot that is so visible and very hard for somebody to go and paint over it or do anything to it. So that's why you want to go bigger, higher, bolder, because those pieces tend to last longer.
Yeah, you use a phrase there, Brody, get to the root. So I'm going to ask you a question now, which hopefully gets to the root of you, and that is why? Why do you do what you do?
Well, I am a writer, first and foremost. I think I've said that in any interview and any podcast that I've ever done. I love to write. And through the years, I'm sure we'll talk about it, I've written and had success writing in a lot of different mediums. So when I started doing street art, I was looking for an active hobby because I was spending so much time sitting in front of the computer. That led to, I always loved street art. I never thought I could do it, but I kind of started thinking about it, thinking I would do something very small. But when I got the idea for Wordsmith and found out that nobody had done it in the streets prior, I got very bold. But I just wanted to make it a reality. So what I'm getting at is I started doing it as a hobby. I started doing it for me, to have an active hobby that got me away from the computer, and it fit the bill. Like it was invigorating. It was I would go out at like 4:00 in the morning. I'm an early riser, but I would get up a couple hours earlier and go out at 4:00, do a bunch of pieces, and I would come back energized with the day. Like I was just, it was awesome. Finally, what I'm getting at is the word started resonating with people. And that's why I started the whole thing saying I'm a writer. So I picked a very bold way to deliver my words to the world. I painted them on a wall, and that's what started resonating with people. Like I've had success through the years in all those different mediums, but never to the degree of Wordsmith. And I say now, I'm a writer and I'm getting read on a daily basis all over the world. That's living the dream for a writer. So if you ask me, why do I do it? It's because I want people to read me. I want to inspire people with my words and motivate them. And that's then the ripple effect and the butterfly effect starts, which is another unexpected avenue. But I do it because I'm a writer and I want to get read.
It's interesting. You have an interesting backstory because your prior life was basically Mad Men. You were a professional advertising copywriter. You leave Chicago, you move to Los Angeles, and instead of taking that journey where you end up, writing big motion picture scripts or working for a talent agency or so forth, you stay true to your art, and then, in speaking in regards to the copywriting, and then you choose street art out of all the different kind of vehicles that you could have expressed your creative flair. And I know you just talked about a little bit that you always love street art, but what, out of all the different kind of outlets that you could have done, your expression, what tuned into street art? Because traditionally, and I'm not an expert in street art like you are, most street art doesn't usually have a lot of copy to it, right? It's more about imagery and a tag and like a logo.
Mm-hmm. Great question. So just to back up, yes, out of school, I was in Chicago working in advertising. I think I listened to my parents a little too much because I'm the youngest of three, and they were like, "When are you going to get a job? When are you going to get a job? Be like your brother and sister." And I wasn't. I was always breaking the rules and doing crazy things, and was the only creative person in my family. My brother and sister are very successful in the business world. But I did back into a career because I listened to my parents, in advertising, and I was good at it. Like I'm not bragging, but I was really good at it because I did take that Mad Men approach where I wanted these creative ideas to be awesome and help companies. And I was getting, a lot of success. I was getting promoted. I was getting paid a lot of money, but advertising beats you up. It's dog years, you know what I mean? In the time you spend in it. So I did quit my job and decided to move to California to write creatively. So the one thing you glossed over is I have reinvented myself many times.
Mm-hmm.
I did write screenplays. I did write short films. I made a short film. I worked in TV, documentary TV, reality TV. I wrote a book that ended up getting published. So I love writing in all these different mediums. But when it brought me to street art, because again, I was looking for that active hobby, it was an unexpected success, you know what I mean? Or just being like, the words were resonating with people. And that's how I grew organically. And that was right when Instagram was blowing up. So to answer your question, why street art? It's because I was so inspired by it through the years. When I first moved to LA, the likes of Shepard Fairey and Banksy and Invader and a lot of local street artists, I would walk around it and just be like, oh my God, these guys are superheroes. These pieces appear overnight. And I just thought it was cool. The one part of the story is I did not think I could do it. However, when I was looking for that active hobby, thinking I was going to do something very small, and stumbled upon is the key. In a way, like the idea of, I'll paint a typewriter and the page coming out of it will feature my words. Very simple idea, but nobody had done it in the streets. So I forgot all about my fear. I forgot I'm not a superhero. I can't do what street artists do. And I just wanted to make that idea a reality. That's when I make the joke. That first night I got bit by a radioactive can of spray paint. Like, I was like, oh my God, I love this. I love this world. I love what I'm doing. I was just putting it out there, and I didn't know if anybody would see it. But the slow, acknowledgement through when Instagram was blowing up, like I documented everything on Instagram, but the hashtag back then was working and people were tagging me in the photos they took of my pieces. It literally just added to that. Oh my God, I love this. I want to get better at this. I want to learn how to make better stencils. I want to do bigger, bolder pieces. So
are you ready to take your business to the next level, but continue to be held back by marketing that fails to bring in new customers? It's time to stop settling for lackluster results, wasting your time and money, and focus on a proven formula for business growth. At Built by Love, we're more than a marketing agency. We're your growth partner. As a multiple-time award-winning agency, we specialize in creating marketing strategies that aren't just effective, they're transformative. Here's what we do. 1. Grow your revenue. Our proven systems drive meaningful, measurable results. 2. Elevate your brand. Our strategies will help you stand out and connect with your audience on a deeper level. 3. We save you time and money. Our award-winning team will handle your advertising and marketing with precision and expertise so you can focus on what you do best. Don't just take our word for it. Experience the difference for yourself. Book your free consultation today at builtbylove.com.
What I didn't realize was I did have this in me. Like I surprised myself where I'm like, oh my God, like I'm not calling myself a superhero, but I love this world that I live in, and I feel like I'm lifting more than I can, and doing things that I didn't think I could do 10 years ago. So why street art? It was just a stumbling in it, thinking I was going to have fun, and then realizing something about myself that I didn't even know I had in me. So I don't know. It's people say that cliche of I found my calling, or it was just this lightning strike, kind of organic thing that happened, and here I am 11 years later,
Wow.
doing it. So
Brody,
yeah.
I clocked that you used a word in that story that you're sharing with us, and then I lost track of the number of times you used that word, and it's a word that is dear to our hearts, and that's love. It's like you just talking that bit there is like you just kept saying how much you love it. Is that what does that word mean to you in your work, both for you and for what you're doing for the people you impact?
100%. So I was at an event last night, and it was a charity event for the unhoused, and I said it probably 100 times, like I am doing what I love. And I think I just said it when I was describing that. 11 years later, I am still so passionate about this. And it's that cliche. And I've written about it because I try to motivate people chasing their dream.
Mhm.
But what I wrote was, do it for yourself. Do what makes you happy. Do what you love.
Mm.
And then hope what you do resonates with
Mm.
others. I think that's the secret to life. Like people have said it like, oh, I feel like I don't work a day in my life because I'm doing what I love. That is me. Like my friends tell me to shut up because I say I just don't feel like as hard as it is, or as long hours that I put into it, it just never feels like work. It feels like a passion that I get to share with the world and then make a living out of it. So yes, I love every moment of it, but it falls apart if all those things that I'm talking about aren't there. Like Dan brought up that a lot of street art isn't word based. If it wasn't word based, it wouldn't work for me. Like I always tell the story that when I was looking for that active hobby, I thought about photography. I love photography. However, if I took up photography and was going out there taking pictures, 3 months later, I would have started resenting it because I wasn't writing, because it was
Mhm.
pulling me away from my writing. And if I, you know what I mean? So it was this conundrum that just worked, or I stumbled upon, where I am doing something fun. I am doing something bold. I am doing something cool. I mean, street art is cool, but it's word based. So I'm writing still on a daily basis. And then the unexpected, people are seeing those words. I'm getting read on a daily basis. So yes, it
And
becomes this whole uncontrollable machine of just doing what I
and
love,
would you
doing
and
something.
would you say that it's true that because your work is so infused with your love of it and in it, that is what has made it as successful as it is?
Absolutely. I think it falls apart if I'm not a good writer. I will say that. So I've always believed in my writing, you know what I mean, and that was infused in the work from the beginning. But the other half of it is, yes, less loving it so much and being so passionate about it. I boil it down to a simpler phrase. When I talk to people, I go, 11 years later, I am still having fun, and
Mm.
I hope that shows in the work.
Mm.
And I think it does show in the work because I'm still coming up with new ways of saying, essentially just motivating people and giving them inspiration. I'm a romantic person, and I'm still finding ways to express myself, romantically. And then I do fun pieces. Like, I can make fun of myself and put something out there that just makes people laugh, because there's so much going on in the world. It's just like, I just want to make people stop, notice, and think. That can have a lot of different reactions. If it makes them ponder something, if it motivates them, if it's romantic and they take a picture of it and send it to their loved one, that's just amazing. So on many different levels, it's this level of passion and success and love.
You can tell you really love what you do, and it comes through from a branding perspective. I mean, as a marketing agency owner, I look at your stuff in a different lens, right? Like, I love the creativity. I'm a fan of your work, but I'm looking at it and I'm like, he's really thought this through. Like, you have a font, you have an icon, you have a definitive design style. And we'll get to it during the podcast. It also seems like you've got categorical themes that you kind of stay to. And I don't want to mention any of those, but some of those are cultural references of popular movies and things like that, and music as well. So when you crafted that, did you spend a lot of time and attention to detail of really like putting everything from your advertising and your creative flair to build this thing? Because it's really well thought out.
Thank you. And it's a great question, because I really haven't talked about this, but it is amazing to me to talk about it. I hope I tell the story or express it like succinctly. So it was all by accident. It was all, believe it or not, it was all organic. Like, I'm a smart guy, I'm a creative guy. So when I was thinking about doing street art, I knew it would be word based. There wasn't a lot of words out there, but I'm a writer. The moment I said it would be word based, I thought of a typewriter, and the image of a typewriter, and I've always loved that. Wow, I really haven't told this story ever, but it's fascinating. So when I first moved to LA, I was writing scripts. I made a business card that the front of it said Phil Brody, writer, and had my phone number, but it looked like the front of a script. On the back was this close up of the keys of a typewriter. So I look at that now, like that was years before I was wordsmithing, but I was always this motif of a typewriter just interests me. It was old school writing. It was the writing of like Hemingway or Bukowski, and I actually thought it was a fun like juxtaposition. Nothing against LA, but it's a different type of writing. You know what I mean? It's not the New York, pecking away on a typewriter kind of writing novels. Kind of writing, but I'm getting off the topic a little bit. But I've always been fascinated with that motif. So when I said I was going to do word based, the image of a typewriter just popped in my head, and I'm like, okay. And then the page coming out of it would feature my words. I've talked about that, but it was just a 1-2. Then researching if anybody had done that, not thinking about the aesthetics. Like, I know it would look good, and here's another thing people don't know: it combines the idea combines the two elements of street art, the two most popular. It's painting via stencil, and wheat pasting a page. That the typewriter has always, no matter what size it is, been painted by me. If you ever see a typewriter in the streets, if you ever see a wordsmith piece in the streets, it's been done by me. I think I farmed out to like some festivals, like a handful of pieces, but it's always done by me. So it was painted typewriter, wheat pasted page, and what I'm getting at is, so I started doing it just because I love the idea, kind of not thinking about it. I crafted phrases using the fewest, most effective words, because that was built in me from advertising. I was a copywriter, and I just intrinsically knew how to do that. I even do that in my writing. Even when I was script writing, I had a mantra: less is more, less is more. I took that into wordsmith. What I'm getting at is, I started it. I'm going to add one more thing. when I started it, I just knew I wanted to document every piece that I did. So I took photos of it. And that's right when Instagram was kind of getting popular. So I started an Instagram page just because I wanted something that I could flip through. That's what Instagram was back then. It was an album of your life. And this was an album of my street art life. What I didn't realize was that Instagram was going to blow up and the following was going to come, and that would lead to the recognition. All that, let's put all that in a ball. It wasn't until I think like 5 months, 6 months in, when people started asking for commissions, that I realized, oh shit, there's something here. I can make some money off of it. Then companies started coming and be like, oh, we love what you do, but we wanted to say this. And this is what I'm getting at. I remember a day where I've said no to companies as much as I've said yes because of that fact. Like if they want their tagline above my typewriter, I'm not going to do it. But what I said in my head is, oh no, I'm very protective of my brand. Using that word brand, like 6 months in, it was like a Hitchcock like moment for me. I'm like, oh my God, I am a brand. I thought I was doing something fun, cool, street art, just running with the superheroes. But then I realized, because of everything that was built in me, from advertising to just being like a smart, creative guy, I did accidentally build this brand. We talked about, you mentioned Shepard Fairey. Shepard Fairey does something called the power of repetition. He started painting, Obey the Giant years ago, or refacing Obey the Giant. And it was started with a sticker. The power of repetition was, the more you saw that, the more you talked about it. Now it's something that's just completely iconic. I accidentally did that with the typewriter. The typewriter has become like a beacon. Like people tell me if they see a typewriter in the distance, they just want to get closer to the page to see what it says. So I have this, and the typewriter has not changed that much through the years. If anything, it got a little simpler, but it stayed the same. So I accidentally started doing this power of repetition, because the typewriter always stays the same. The words are what changes. And then over time, I started doing different types of pieces and doing large letters with a signature typewriter. But again, a long-winded way of answering your question is, it is something that seems so calculated and smart, with the branding and the picking of the font. I went through pages and pages and pages of fonts before I stumbled upon this very deep, very not well known at the time typewriter font. The moment I saw it, I'm like, oh my God, that's it. And so it was all kind of like just me looking for a way to express myself, in the idea I had. And then over time, with the repetition, it became something that was, I don't know what I'm trying to say, like bigger than I ever thought it could be, but it was.
That's fascinating to hear, that something which on the outside looks incredibly strategic and deliberate and full of forethought was organic and accidental, I think you said. Just on behalf of our listener, who is almost certainly an entrepreneur, Brody, what's the lesson in what you've just shared with us?
The lesson is kind of what I think the biggest lesson is that I can give is what I alluded to before. And it did a piece that says it. I was doing what made me happy. I was doing stuff for me. And in turn doing what I loved. I was writing. It made me happy to get a can of spray paint in my hand and go out there and run with the superheroes and do even small pieces. And again, I was doing it for me. It was an active hobby, but all of those on a daily basis fulfilled me. So even if I didn't have the success, and this is a major point, if I did not have the success that I have, or the recognition, or Instagram blowing up and things of that nature, I know I would still be doing street art. Maybe I wouldn't be doing it as often or as large or as whatever, like in places all over the world, but I know I'd still be doing it because it fulfilled something. It made me so happy on a daily basis. So the lesson for any entrepreneur is,
you're an entrepreneur and you're busy. But we know that every business owner needs a podcast without the hassle of learning about production. Well, we figured it out for you. Activate Your Podcast is a service that offers everything you need to make a podcast that creates meaningful relationships with your clients at scale. The experts at AYP will work directly with you to produce 5 pillar episodes from a 2-hour conversation that captures the trust and love you are bringing to your ideal client. And the assets are all yours to create your own amazing marketing campaign. For the benefits of a podcast without the hard work, head to activateyourpodcast.com and let's create something great together. Now, back to the episode.
Find that thing that even when you're struggling, even if you don't have the success, immediately, it's still making you happy on a daily basis. I was good at advertising. I was getting paid a lot of money, but I was not happy. I had a moment where I'm like, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life or another day. And when I quit my job, my family and friends thought I was crazy. But even when I was struggling, I was so much happier. And I think that's the basis of it. It's just like entrepreneurs, put blood, sweat, and tears into their ideas, but you have to believe in the idea. You have to love the idea. You have to be fulfilled by the idea, or I think it might be some torture, you know what I mean? Or just unhappiness kind of along the way. I hope that makes sense and it's not just a sweeping, statement. I think you really have to find those things that fulfill you.
It's an interesting thing. And the way I've looked at how you've packaged everything up as your brand, I was raised in Maryland, single mom, very poor family. There was no way in a million years we could afford a word processor or a computer. So at the time when I was writing papers for high school and then college before I moved out to California, I was using a typewriter. And so I'm about to age myself on that, right? But the one thing that I think is so unique, and this is where I was going to get to, it was really interesting that you chose the typewriter, is that it's unlike a computer that's digital. You write something and you don't like it, you're not committed to it, you just easily backspace or delete it out, right? It's very easy to do that. But on a typewriter, once you commit to that word, you really have to be committed to that word. Because if you're halfway down a page and you've written all that stuff out, the last thing you want to do is try to white out and go back. And it's not easy to erase. Like, it's committed. And that's one of the elements of your brand that I thought was really kind of a nod to your craft, is that you chose a typewriter, which is, from a creative perspective, you really have to think through the words that you're committing to on paper. And that's exactly what your brand exudes.
I absolutely positively love that. And I'm actually kind of blown away because after 11 years, I've never thought about it that way. That the permanent typewriter, which I'm painting onto a wall, is also reflected in the words that once I put them on a wall are out there for the world, and I can't take them back. I can't erase something. And that is an amazing, what do you call that? Like synergy. That again is accidental. I never even thought about that, but there is something very symbolic in that. And I love that realization, or the fact that
art mimics life, right? Isn't that what they say?
Daniel just pretends to be stupid. He's actually quite a smart
he pretends
guy.
very well.
Yeah. No, I love it. And one of the other things I love, Brody, is how often you have talked about your love and passion for writing. Almost every answer you've given, you've talked about writing. Where did that come from? Where did that start from? What was your relationship with words and writing when you were growing up?
So I'm a weird kid. Anybody that's doing street art is got to say like, oh, that person's weird. But I was the youngest. So I was a voracious reader. I was a comic book kid. And I went from wanting to be like when you're a kid, you're like, I went from wanting to be an astronaut to a fireman to a teacher, oddly enough. And then like literally probably in the span of I'm talking 6 months, I'm like, I want to be a writer. And it was because of the love of books. It was because of the love of comic books. I just started diving in, the art was great, but I was more fascinated with, the dialogue and the stories and the characters, how they crafted that. And that went into movies too. Like, I was a huge movie kid, but I took it so many steps farther of being like, how did this person create this world? How did they think of it? How did they write it down? What was that process? So words and writing always fascinated me. So I knew really early on that's what I wanted to do. And it's just never gone away. If anything, it's become stronger. Like I said, I wrote a novel that ended up getting published. It's one of my favorite times. And it's so funny. That was before street art, but that was one of my favorite times in my life. And I'm so proud of that novel. If I wasn't doing street art, I'd probably be on my third or fourth novel because I loved it so much. And it was such an accomplishment. And I still, think about crafting that world and those characters. And then, yes, this amazing, right turn or left turn happened when I started doing street art. And I went down that road, and I'm still speeding down that road. But it's writing, it's word based. I do hope to get back to long form writing at some point, but again, it's a great problem to have that wordsmith is keeping me, busy enough that I haven't written my second book or third book. But again, to answer your question, it was just built in me from a kid, as a kid. And I said I was young and I was, making stupid mistakes. I got grounded all the time. So I'm literally now I thanked my parents in a post years ago. Thank you for grounding me, because it made me, while I was in my room, read comic books, dream about, worlds and creating stories and things like that. It turned me into a dreamer because I was so bored, not bored in my room. Actually, the amazing thing, when I was in my room, it was as exciting as running around on a playground. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
But it was just all it was just the origin story of me. But it all makes sense in hindsight, even though that was really difficult, back then.
I remember 4 years ago, I had a dumb idea to write a book. I can write a little bit of marketing copy, but I'm not a writer. And I thought to myself, this isn't going to be that hard. It's pretty, I'll create an outline, and then from the outline, I'll kind of fill it in and so forth. And that was an endeavor that took me over 2 years to write. It was incredibly difficult and profound, because you really have to start to do like soul searching as you're really putting all of those words. And once it got shopped and picked up by a publisher, and then they started crafting it, redoing it, you get the reality or the realization that, oh my God, this thing's going to be out there, and it might be sitting on a store shelf, and someone I have never met, will never meet, is going to read my words. My words are out there forever. And it was a scary and rewarding journey. Now, can you first, for our listener, mention your book, because it's definitely a great read, and then can you just talk a little bit about that story, because I know how my experience was, and it was thrilling and also terrifying.
I am 100% there. So the book is called The Holden Age of Hollywood. And it was first written under the name Phil Brody. And it got good reviews. It won some awards, but nobody knew who Phil Brody was. Something happened in 2018. The publisher, which was a small publisher outside of Chicago, very passionate about books, they went under. So all the rights to the book reverted back to me, which is when I re-released it under the authorship of Wordsmith. So right now it's The Holden Age of Hollywood by Wordsmith. It's on my website. And it's Kindle version, paperback version. The hardback sold out. So it's still there. But what I was getting at with the changing of authorship, a whole new audience discovered it, because people knew who Wordsmith was, and they were like, "He wrote a book. I want to know what this is about." So it's been awesome. You know what I mean? The resurgence over the last couple of years and the interest in the book. But as far as the process, holy moly, everything you said totally resonates, because at the time, I'll tell the story very quickly. At the time, I was working in documentary TV, reality TV, and I would work for like 3 months, and then I would know I'd have several months off and a nest egg of money. And so when that happened, I knew I had this story that I wanted to write. I didn't want to write it as a script. So I'm like, I think I'm going to try to write it as a book. but it was terrifying because I never wrote a novel before, but I was really passionate about this story, this idea, these characters that were floating around in my head. So I did. When the job was done and I had all the time to myself, I started writing every day. And I originally started writing like 4 or 5 hours a day, but then got obsessed with it, and the characters were talking in my head, and I would continue to write for like 6 to 8 to 10 hours a day. I'm not exaggerating. I got obsessed with it
Wow.
in a very cool but also frightening manner. I'm like, I don't even know if this is going to be good, but I can't stop. I'm so into it. I'm going to take a tangent for a second because that also led to Wordsmith. Because, like I said, after I wrote that book and I was exhausted, and it did end up getting published, and that was an awesome process. But when I was done and exhausted, I'm like, I am spending way too much time sitting in front of a computer and doing what I love, but I just knew I was a smart person. I'm like, I need something active. I need something like that gets me out and about. And that led to Wordsmith. That's how that whole impetus happened. But going back to the book, it was a crazy experience of just, I learned that I'm an early riser, so I would start writing in the morning, and then I would break. I would make myself go on a hike. But when I went on a hike, it was like that movie Beautiful Mind, where I would be thinking of things and be like, oh yeah, I need to link that, and I need to bring that, and oh, I need to change that. So when I got back to the computer after that hour and a half or 2 hours of exercise, I couldn't stop. And that's why 5 hours turned into 10 hours, because I did that break in the day. My mind never stopped, but I just wanted to write more and more. So it was an obsessive, amazing time. And the other reason that I mentioned it earlier is I do want to get back to that. Again, I am thrilled with Wordsmith. I am thrilled with that success. But then there's that adrenaline, scary, terrifying thing of, I have this story I want to craft. So at some point, I hope I find the balance and can get back to long form writing, because it is another level of love, adrenaline, terrifyingly creative kind of experience. I don't wish it on anybody, but if you do go down it and love it as much as I did, even everything that I said, it's a holy wow experience. So yeah.
It's kind of like a blessing and a curse. It sounds to me like you've got a couple more books in you for sure. And there's a ripe opportunity for your stories and adventures through Wordsmith to be tied back into a story, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. And
Yes.
the curse part of it is, once you write a book, I don't know about you, but I was like, that's it, I'm done. I'm not doing that again. And then a year passes, and then all of a sudden these ideas start to percolate, and you're like, okay, maybe there is another book. And then all of a sudden there's another book idea.
It's about like women
Absolutely.
in childbirth, isn't it? It's like just right after the event, it's like, no, never again. And then like, give it a year. It's like, oh, maybe I have another kid.
Absolutely. So yeah, like I am a percolator of ideas, and I do have stories that are floating around in my head. And even after years, they're still floating, which is key, because some ideas you can think about as a writer, and you're like, oh, this is why it won't work, and it sinks and it goes away. But I have at least 2 ideas that are still floating, and I will love to write them, at some point in some form. The other thing I'll say is, because of the changing the authorship of Wordsmith, or the book, to Wordsmith, and a lot of whole new audience reading it, in a roundabout sort of way, like I have meetings every now and then about that property with Hollywood, and it came full circle. That's what I did when I first moved here,
Wow.
booking my scripts. Now people are talking to me about, this could be something, this could be a series, this could be, a film. And it's great to have those meetings. They're still frustrating, because you'll have a great meeting and then nothing comes, of it for, 2, 3, 6 months kind of thing. But the other thing that happened is, you kind of touched upon it, is somebody read the book. They were like, we like it. Did you ever think about writing something in the world of street art, in that world? And I started working several years ago on an idea set in the street art world, put it aside for reasons, and then it just came back. Somebody else asked for it, so I went into the treatment and did, again, it's not long form writing, but I did spend some time writing that pitch document. And I've had a couple meetings over the last couple weeks about that idea is set in that world. So it's amazing how things come full circle.
Hey there, entrepreneurs and business owners. Are you feeling stuck with marketing strategies that just aren't delivering? Struggling to attract the right customers or boost your sales? Imagine turning those challenges into triumphs with a proven roadmap tailored just for you. Introducing Marketing Built by Love, the game-changing book by award-winning expert Daniel Bussius. Marketing Built by Love is designed to tackle your biggest business pains head-on, whether you're battling low visibility, weak customer loyalty, or stagnant growth. This book provides actionable solutions that drive real results. Here's how it can transform your business. Boost your revenue. Implement strategies that convert leads into loyal customers. Strengthen customer relationships. Create meaningful connections that keep your clients coming back. Streamline your marketing efforts. Save time and money with effective, easy-to-follow systems. Don't let marketing woes hold you back any longer. Take control and watch your business thrive. Grab your copy of Marketing Built by Love today in stores at Barnes & Noble, or order online at Amazon or wherever you buy quality books. Transform your marketing. Solve your business problems. Achieve the success you deserve with Marketing Built by Love. Available now.
In the world of street art, I mean, there's for someone like me that is aware of it, but I'm not well versed into it. So there's the entities or the brands or the artists, whatever you call, like Banksy. There's Shepard Fairey. There's obviously Wordsmith. There's others. Is it difficult to get into that inner circle or that sanctum where you start to know these people, and what's that community like?
So great question. So when I first started doing street art, I thought it was going to be very secretive and competitive and just, just a whole, world of wow. It was in a sense the opposite. And it started in LA where when I started doing the art, I started going to things like gallery shows, or there were even like street art, like outdoor festival things where people would have tents and they'd be like, here's some of my art and stuff. And I would go to those. And I've told this story before. There was one artist established here in LA, and I knew his stuff. And I was talking to him at one point. He goes, "Do you do art?" I go, "Well, yeah, I just started doing, this typewriter with a page coming out of it," talking kind of meekly. You know what I mean? I was just kind of like, "Yeah, it's a typewriter and a page." And he goes, "You're Wordsmith? Holy crap, I love your stuff." And it was huge for me. It was like, I always say, like, he lifted me up on the shoulders and made me, stand straight and be like, holy crap, he knows my stuff. And that continued to happen in the sense of, what I thought was a very secretive and competitive world was the opposite. It was very warm and inviting. People wanted to talk about the craft. I had people invite me to their studio and be like, "I'll show you how I do this, how I use spray paint." That artist was one of the first that said, "We need to get you bigger. We need to get you, high up on rooftops." And he helped me craft a larger stencil. So
Wow.
that was awesome for me. That has led to 11 years later, I love to work with other artists. I invite them to my studio all the time. If somebody sends me a message saying, "I'm thinking about doing street art, how did you do it?" I'll talk them through it or invite them to my studio and show them all the techniques, because people did that for me.
Amazing.
Back then. The other thing I'll say is, some of my closest friends, it's been 11 years, but some of my closest friends right now are from this art world. And I love that. And maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I realized something, like, because they're like, some of my closest friends are in this world. I was like, that's awesome. But I thought the link was art or just creativity. And 2 or 3 years ago, I realized that's not the link. The link is, these are people that have reinvented themselves countless times. And I realized that everybody has that story in them, like the street artists that I know, the street artists that are my friends, or artists that are my friends. They're like, "Oh yeah, I used to work this job until I quit it." And then I'm like, holy shit, we have all reinvented ourselves. And I'm the poster child of reinventing myself. So that's what I gravitate toward. You know what I mean? No offense to anybody that's worked one job all their lives. It's just like, that's great. I hope it makes you happy. But these people that have reinvented themselves, quit jobs, I say dove into pools of unknown and just took chances. I think they're the most interesting people in the world, and you can learn more from them than the person that, you know, possibly had massive success doing one job. I think it's fun to change and reinvent and just take chances.
One of your that's amazing, and I'm thinking of another podcast that would be good for you to come on, but we'll leave that for another time. Daniel's smiling there too. One of your earlier answers, Brady, when you were talking about your experience of writing your novel, I think you inadvertently touched on some of the really core themes and pillars of this podcast, which is the importance of balancing all the different parts of our life. You know, so you got the wealth aspect and your writing is kind of, you know, our listener might be an entrepreneur that's got a business, sort of non-artistic business, but for you the writing is kind of the pursuit of wealth. But even in that, you still said that you made yourself take time to go and, you know, go out in nature. You said go for a walk. Has that importance of balancing, you know, the pursuit of wealth, to use, you know, our terminology, and also your health, has that always been there? Because I mean, you look in good shape. It's got to be said.
It has, and I know what you're asking, but I'll also add something else to it. So when I was working in advertising in Chicago, and I was miserable, I knew I was miserable. I knew I wanted to write, but I didn't have the energy or time. Like advertising eats you up, and I would come home at the end of the day exhausted, and the last thing I had energy for was to be creative. I had such a drive in me. Like, I knew I wanted to write. I knew I had stories in my head. I started getting up 2 to 3 hours before I had to go to work, and I would start writing. And I remember this time, Dan, you dated yourself a little bit ago. This was before blogging. And like, I would craft these short stories, and they were fun and they were funny. They were kind of reflecting on childhood and the corporate world. And when I was done with them, I would send them to an email list of my friends. And that email list continued to grow over time because everybody was enjoying the stories. But what I'm getting at is I was blogging before blogging. Like there was no, oh, I'm going to put this up on the internet. I was sending it via email. But the reason I'm saying that is I was so passionate about what I do, I found the time to get it done. And I literally was getting up at like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, and then going into work like at 7 or 8. But I would walk into work like with energy, like I did more than you guys will do all day already. You know what I mean? The 3 hours before. But then getting back to your question, yes, I always try to find the balance in everything. So when I was diving deep into the book and knew that I was maybe unhealthy, I knew to break that up with a hike. But that led to, when I was hiking, like I said, I was figuring out more if I would have spent that 2.5 or 2 hours in front of the computer. Like, it's just an amazing thing. Like they say, your best ideas come to you when you're in the shower. I totally believe that. It's like, you have to get away from staring at what you're doing on a daily basis, whether you're a painter or an entrepreneur or whatever you're doing, and you will figure out a lot, you know what I mean, about your passion, your project, your specific piece when you're not staring at it. So I think that kind of goes hand in hand.
There's two key themes.
That answers your question.
Yeah.
There's two key themes that you just were talking about. Reinvention, which is also invention, right? And risk. Getting out there on the streets, risking your art, like risking taking that first step to do it. Like, who am I to do this? And this leads to you've built your business, right? You've built your art that's become a business that turns you into a professional artist. Now you're making a living. You're in Los Angeles, the hub of creativity for all this. This is where you found your fame, so to speak, initially. And then you decide to up and leave and not go to like, oh, I'm going to go back to Chicago, or I'm going to go down to Miami, or I'm going to go to New York City. You decide to fly to another country and take up residence in all places of London. I love the city, but that sounds crazy to me. Like, what spurred you to do that? And then, like, shortly, if you could say what that experience was like, which we'll get to, then you came back again to Los Angeles.
Yes. These are all great questions. So that's a compliment to you guys. I'm going to dive into that. But one thing I wanted to add to the last question that I've never really talked about, but it is at the heart of what was just asked, is when I was writing that book, I said I had a nest egg, working in reality TV. That dwindled down. Like what I'm getting at is, and I don't think I've ever expressed this, when I started wordsmithing, no lie, I was broke. I literally was. I remember this time period of struggling, chasing the dream, doing what I love. I was broke. And I think about it. There's no reason, because I'm a smart person, that I should have been starting an endeavor that I had to buy paint. I had to make stencils. I had to go out there. But I believed in it so much, I literally scratched and
And
clawed
believed in yourself.
to just
And believed in yourself.
to
That's got to be key there.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I knew I needed this hobby. I believed in my writing. I'm like, this is going to be cool. This is going to be healthy. This is going to be fun. And it was all that. And the crazy thing is, shortly after, I think I got another, writing job. So the money started coming in, but I was loving the street art more than I was loving working for TV. And for that to take off, for the commissions start coming and working with companies and being able to make money at it, and then quickly realizing I think I can do this full time, was amazing to me. But it's because I scratched and clawed and took this chance that I really shouldn't have, because I remember whatever, it was a tough time in my life, but those are some of the best. Bezos starting, in his garage. Those are some of the greatest stories. And I'm not Bezos, but I do have that inkling of if you have an idea, I don't care where you are in life, find a way to run with it.
You can't shortcut that.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about London. So it does sound crazy, but if you've listened to me, Reinvention, taking chances, and love to travel, I always wanted to live overseas. So that was at the impetus or at the heart of it. Like I always loved London also. The real catalyst for doing it was nothing more than Brexit. Brexit was kicking in. I have, because my dad's from Poland, I have EU citizenship. So I have US and EU citizenship. The UK was going to leave the EU, and it became a thing. If I didn't move to London by December 31st of this year, I'd have to jump through hoops. Like you'd have to sit there and do the whole, you know what I'm saying? Like the whole sponsorship company, visa, this, that. And I'm like, if I don't do it now, when? And that's a major thing in my life. It's just like I like to take chances. I want to experience life to the fullest. I always wanted to live overseas. That goes hand in hand with the thought, what I do, I can do from anywhere. And that is true. And that was true. So I did move to London. I always said I was splitting time between the UK and LA. And that is true. When I was in London, I was experiencing that art world overseas, and it was great, but it was different. So that was fun. But I was coming back often for big jobs. I would plan even like if one city like Cleveland came and they said, hey, we want to bring you to Cleveland. And I was born there, born and raised. So going back there was awesome. But when I knew I was going to Cleveland for this major job, I started talking to other cities. Like I think on that trip, I went to Cleveland, Chicago, and LA. Oh, I might have gone to Vancouver too, but I would sit there and say, hey, we can make this wall happen. So I was going back for major jobs, but multiple cities. So to answer your question, it was fulfilling a dream. It was living overseas. What I can do from anywhere. It was experiencing that whole thing of that art world and making new friends there. But I kept coming back for big jobs, and that's a major part of the story. So if you want me to fast forward to why did I come back after 2 years, I just realized I still don't see the ceiling in this, and that's amazing to say after 11 years. So I wanted to take advantage of that. I'm like, Europe is great, but it's not the same art world. And I had a couple art world. I had a couple artists that said, you know, it's great. You're going to love it here. However, you're not going to be paid to do a mural, like you are in the States. And working with companies is few and far in between. I did have some success and it was great. But two things: I kept coming back for major jobs, and then a huge like 70%, I'm going to make up a number, 70% of the art I was producing was coming back to the States. So I literally, after 2 years, I was like, this is great, this is fun.
It's a lot of travel to get back, right?
Glad I did it, but I'm like, I'm going to make a business decision and I'm going to come back to LA. And it was I'll say, after I've been back 2 years, after 2 years, I made a good decision because business has been good and it has been great. I miss London. I don't miss the weather, but I miss London. That was hard. It's a total tangent, but I loved everything about it. But doing that weather on 365 days a year, coming from LA, it was really difficult.
Did you ever bump into Banksy?
I think I circle the same group of friends and stuff like that. So I don't know. We might have been in the same room, but I don't think he's the type of person that says, "Hey, hello, I'm Banksy." But yeah.
As we're coming to the top of the hour, I want to make sure that people can know, where can they find you? I mean, obviously you've mentioned Instagram, you've got a website. So can you elaborate a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So my artist name is Wordsmith with no vowels. So it's WRDSMTH. And the reason for that was, honestly, like Wordsmith was taken on Instagram. This is such a simple story. When I was trying to think of the artist name and I did the image of the typewriter, I'm like, oh, Wordsmith would be cool. But that was taken on Instagram. But when I removed the vowels, it was available. And I looked at it and I'm like, that's even cooler. So I just ran with it. So what I'm getting at is, if you go to Wordsmith on Instagram, no vowels, WRDSMTH. If you go to wordsmith.com, if you go to Twitter, that's me. I'm on there. You can easily find me. If you put WRDSMTH into Google, you'll see, past articles, interviews, artwork, etc., etc. So I'm easy to find if you just remove the vowels.
And can people purchase your art?
Absolutely. So I have a website. I have a lot of prints and art on the website. I'm in several galleries here in the States, and not actually a few galleries. Like, I'm very I guess particular or choosy. I don't want to be the artist that's in, every gallery that you kind of, turn the corner kind of thing. I think there's a saturation in that. So, there's a gallery in New York that I work with. There's one in London that I work with. So yes, you know what I mean? There's, and you can send me a message at any time if you have any questions. If anybody wants to talk art, know where the galleries are, talk about a commission, you can always send me a message on Instagram or through my website. And I'm the person answering it. Like, I'm very close to what I do. I love what I do. So that's me. That's reading those messages and responding.
Amazing. I want to tell a short story, and thank you, because you mentioned earlier how the community of artists embraced you, taught you, invited you over, told you how to do things, and then you've paid that forward. And a long time ago, I came back to Los Angeles. I was broke and my company was failing and I was out of work. I didn't have money. I was virtually homeless. I had no internet, no TV, nothing. And you really embraced me. And, we know each other through a friend of a friend, but the hospitality and the generousness that you gave to me was overwhelming, and something still to this day I've never forgot. So I want to thank you for that. And it's really ingrained in you because you're sharing that and doing that for others to this day. So I think that's amazing. So thank you.
Thank you for saying that. And it is who I am. Like, I'm a very positive person, and I'd be a walking contradiction. Like, my work would be a walking contradiction if I wasn't. You know what I mean? But that's at the heart of it. Like, I am a positive person, and that reflects in my work. And yeah, it means a lot for you to say that. But yeah, I remember that time too.
Thank you. Any final words?
No, this has been a very organic and awesome conversation. So I was very happy to be invited, and even more thrilled now, after experiencing it. But yeah, I just go back to kind of what I said. Like, if anybody's looking for inspiration from this, it's find what makes you happy on a daily basis and really dive into it, because I think that's the secret to life.
Wordsmith, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Built by Love podcast. If you found the conversation inspiring or helpful in any way, then head to builtbylove.com/podcast and make sure you're subscribed to our email list. Please also take a few minutes to leave us a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts, and share this episode with a friend that you think it might help. Each review helps us to spread the message of love to more people. See you next time on the Built by Love podcast.